Moscow is now without Wildberries. At least that's what the daily summary from the Ministry of Defense indicates. Wildberries warehouses are burning in Russia again. One of them is Kolesino, which was arguably the largest central hub near Moscow. These are the consequences of the work of fierce drones. According to the mayor of Moscow, about 600 of them were flying. So after the attack, it's not couriers working at two huge logistics sites in Russia now, but firefighters. The area of the warehouse in Kolesino near Moscow is 250,000 square meters. Millions of goods pass through the company's logistics hub. Now, how it is burning is clearly visible from the footage that local residents are posting online. Also, another logistics site, this one in Domodedovo, is on fire as well. The fire is also large-scale, as evidenced by materials in local social media groups, and it has still not been extinguished.
It's just horrible. How could it hit so hard? It was flying around since 3 in the morning. It was so scary to watch. Yeah. We just stopped at the gas station. Yeah, look, it's like it's right there. When will this fucking war ever end?
It is difficult to calculate what the total amount of damages will be after this attack on Wildberries, given that, as of today, this figure already exceeded $10 billion. And these are not final figures, but only intermediate ones calculated by Russian analysts themselves. Ukrainian UAVs have disabled 7 out of the company's 10 largest warehouse complexes. These are calculations from the Ministry of Defense. However, if you also count somewhat smaller warehouses, their number has increased to 15. According to data from Reuters journalists, which they compiled earlier using satellite imagery, about 20% of the company's warehouses across Russia have been destroyed by fire. By the way, Wildberries controls about half of the online retail market in the enemy country, is close to the Kremlin, and is known for openly supplying military goods. Ukrainian drones have been visiting the company's sites regularly since mid-July, and strikes on the Russian marketplace are continuing, so the scale of the new damage has not yet been determined. However, even this is enough for Russian economists to have already sounded the alarm. Losses of 600 to 800 billion rubles are paralyzing the operations not only of the marketplace but little by little of the country as well. The company's debts to Russian banks are estimated at over 1 trillion rubles. And if some sellers are unable to fulfill their obligations, banks will face a new wave of problematic borrowers. Therefore, the situation is being called critical. So much so that the Central Bank of the Russian Federation and the Russian government were forced to recommend that smaller banks provide financial support to the affected small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. Experts in Russia believe that the authorities will not be able to resolve this crisis quickly. Ukrainian partisans also provided a spectacular sight on the tracks tonight. In the Orenburg region, tankers with gas and gasoline were blown up. 2,000 kilometers from the border, the sabotage was organized by the so-called Budanov detachments. Their activities in Russia became known after the start of the full-scale invasion, when the then head of the GUR reported that one of the key areas of intelligence work had become the organization of partisan detachments. The General Staff also confirmed the strike on the Kamensky plant. This is an important enterprise of the enemy's military-industrial complex in the Rostov region. There, the enemy produced solid rocket fuel for ammunition for the Oregon Smerch and Tornado S multiple launch rocket systems. However, in order to prevent the Russians from launching missiles and ballistic weapons at Ukrainian cities, our military is trying to destroy launch pads and weapons depots in the temporarily occupied territories. Yes, in Crimea, the Defense Forces struck the launch positions and deployment site of the Russian coastal missile system Bastion overnight. According to the Navy, the enemy suffered significant losses. It is precisely from such systems that the Russians launch Onyx and Zircon missiles at Ukraine. So this time, the Ukrainian military decided not to strike the missiles themselves in the sky, but to destroy the launch systems. And they didn't stop there. In the Zaporizhzhia region, near Svitlodolinske, they struck a railway bridge that the occupiers were using for military logistics and the transfer of personnel. In the Donetsk region in Kyiv, they hit warehouses with ammunition and logistical supplies. They also destroyed a Russian Strela 10 air defense system in Crimea, drone warehouses in Vuhledar and Lysychansk, and 2 enemy command posts in Selidov and Mikhailivka. In other words, the Ukrainian military is methodically taking out Russian military infrastructure, from missile launchers and warehouses to command posts and logistics. And this is a case where the best way is not to shoot down an enemy missile, but to ensure that it simply has nothing to launch from. A Russian escort blew up a Ukrainian traitor and does not regret it one bit. Margarita Rayot has been taken into custody by Russian law enforcement. She is accused of terrorism. The woman planted a bomb in a trash can in Sevastopol, where a traitor to Ukraine, a naval officer who had defected to Russia, was living. Robert Shayev died on August 13th when he was walking past the trash can and the explosive device went off. During her arrest, Margarita Rayot did not deny her involvement in the liquidation of the collaborator and stated that she did not regret her actions. Earlier, when Ukrainian drones attacked a railway station in Rostov, she recorded a video with the words, "That's what you deserve, Russians." In Ukraine, Robert Shayev was wanted for high treason. Until 2014, he was the commander of the only submarine, the Zaporizhzhia. During the occupation of Crimea, Shayev immediately betrayed his oath. In winter, Russia may launch a new offensive and intensify strikes on civilian infrastructure. At the same time, as the New York Times reports, it is not yet known what the specific directions or scale of this offensive will be. It is certain that the Kremlin, as before, seeks to establish complete control over the Donbass. And if it fails to achieve this by the fall of 2027, the likelihood of negotiations, according to officials and analysts, will increase. However, it seems the Russians do not need to wait for winter to increase pressure on the front. Right now, the battle for Slovyansk and Kramatorsk is unfolding. At least that is what Ukrainian observers are already writing about. These two cities are the so-called outposts of the defense forces in the Donetsk region. Therefore, according to journalists, the Russians are concentrating their main forces there to at least attempt to deliver a decisive blow on the front. On this section of the fight, writes Yuri Butusov, the situation with Pokrovsk is currently repeating itself. It is becoming increasingly difficult to control the city as well as to establish routes to it. As for Pokrovsk itself, it is still the direction with the most active enemy attacks, over 30 per day. It is effectively the same on the Kostiantynivka and Slovyansk defensive directions. According to the General Staff, the Russians stormed our defenders' positions over 200 times in total over the past day. The armed forces of Ukraine are holding the line and responding significantly to the enemy with counterattacks in the Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions, while also steadily destroying the enemy's logistics, equipment, and deployment sites. A feat that our soldiers perform every single day. This is about a story that happened in the southern direction, where our borders are defended by the 475th Regiment. During a combat mission on the front line, the commander of the assault company, call sign KOT 92, drove under enemy drones to rescue two wounded soldiers. Vladislav Polsky risked his own life, quickly got behind the wheel to save his brothers in arms. Two assault soldiers were wounded after a successful attack on Russian positions. They were attacked by Molniya drones. A ground robotic platform went to help them, but it too was damaged by drones during the evacuation. The wounded were left right in the middle of an open area, in danger. And then aerial reconnaissance spotted a pickup truck speeding along the broken road straight toward the soldiers. Behind the wheel was their commander. Vladislav drove up to the damaged platform, quickly loaded the wounded into the pickup truck, and sped off to a safe place. His comrades say that is exactly why the soldiers go into the most difficult assaults, because they know their commanders will not hide behind their backs. The enemy attacked Ukrainian cities with ballistic missiles tonight. Iskanders, North Korean missiles, and anti-ship Onyx missiles were launched at Kyiv, Kremenchuk, and Kryvyi Rih. There are 6 victims in the capital and the region. Fires and destruction have been recorded in Kyiv's Obolonsky and Holosivsky districts. The book market near the Pochina metro station has been hit again. Olena Matyutska has more on the scale of the destruction.
It is smoking and smoldering. The Petrivka book market has once again come under enemy fire. The metal structures are bent, and in the first rows, the ones we can see, there is no trace of literature left. Night. The situation immediately after the enemy target hit the market. A fire covering more than 2,000 square meters. It's impossible to even count how much merchandise was destroyed here. Dozens of rescuers, 30 units of firefighting equipment. However, these are long, continuous rows of structures, so the firefighters are going through every meter, almost by hand, in the middle of the night and the drought.
We have to move very slowly, dousing and dismantling everything, the entire burnt area, in order to completely extinguish it.
Kyiv State Emergency Service spokesperson Pavlo Petrov said that there are casualties specifically at the book market.
Unfortunately, 3 people were injured at this location, 2 on the spot. Another person later, as far as I know, sought medical attention.
This is not the first destruction at Petrivka. Sellers from neighboring stalls, which the fire did not spread to today, are taking apart the shutters damaged by the blast wave.
The literature itself, no, there are a lot of victims. Well, it can't be compared to that side. It can't be compared. We at least have something. Well, it's like that. There's a lot of damage here.
Tonight in Kyiv, as a result of an enemy attack, there were fires and damage at 4 locations. Most of the fires were extinguished during the night, but firefighters were on duty the longest near the market.
As of now, all fires, including this one, have been extinguished. But you can see that the smoke continues because there are still some isolated pockets that continue to smolder or burn.
Firefighters are monitoring the ignition points, dismantling and dousing structures where necessary. Olena Matsyutska, Roman Repa, TSN 1+1.
Explosions in Odesa. The enemy launched a massive drone attack on the city. One of them hit a large shopping center at the exit from the city. 4 people were injured, 3 were hospitalized. Social media users are sharing the moment of the impact, which was caught on camera. Preliminarily, the Russians hit a Nova Poshta facility inside the epicenter building at the 7th kilometer. A warehouse caught fire. 2 people were injured as a result of a night attack on the south of the Odesa region. The Russians attacked the region with strike drones. Most of the drones were shot down, but there were also hits. In Bilhorod-Dnipropetrovsk, the blast wave damaged 3 5-story buildings at once. Grass caught fire. The fire has already been extinguished. It was loud in Kherson today as well. The occupiers targeted the city center with guided aerial bombs and drones. At least 1 person was injured. 5 more city residents were wounded due to Russian terror throughout the day. Drones crashed into apartments and high-rise buildings and chased civilian cars. Towards morning, the Russians attacked the village of Viktorivka in the Zaporizhzhia region. They killed an elderly couple in their own home. Russian terrorists also struck Mikhailivsky with guided aerial bombs. A man was wounded. In the village of Ukrainka, they hunted cars with FPV drones. 3 villagers were wounded, and in a field, the occupiers attacked farmers while they were harvesting wheat. A combine harvester and a car were damaged. 2 men were wounded, one of whom died in the hospital. They struck the fire and rescue unit in Marhanets, Dnipropetrovsk region 5 times. The occupiers deliberately targeted the State Emergency Service building. The premises and fire trucks were damaged. The rescuers survived, but the day before, the invaders killed 2 people in the region and wounded 14 others. They struck the largest mining and metallurgical enterprise in Ukraine with a ballistic missile. Fires broke out in Kryvyi Rih. 11 of the wounded are in hospitals and 1 man is in serious condition. There is another victim in the Nikopol district. A high-rise building, a private house, an enterprise, and infrastructure were damaged there. Ukraine will not receive a sufficient number of Patriot missiles to protect its infrastructure before winter. This is reported by the British publication The Guardian. Russia produces about 750 Iskander ballistic missiles per year. In addition, there are Kinzhals, converted air defense missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. At the same time, the US, Germany, and Japan combined are capable of producing about 840 interceptor missiles per year. Ukraine is already depleting its stocks of Patriot missiles. According to The Guardian, the interception rate for ballistic missiles has dropped from over 70% to 0. The British publication concludes that Kyiv will have to prepare for serious disruptions to electricity, water supply, sewage, and heating this winter. And it directly calls the situation a failure of NATO's defense planning. Because it was clear back in 2022 that the stockpiles of Patriot missiles were insufficient, yet their production was not expanded.